What else you want?
Just an apple.
Get my kids. Y'all give me some love. I love y'all.
Love you too.
Gunfire slices through the air like it's trying to erase someone. No warning, just rapid flashes, each one louder than the last. Then a shape crumples to the ground, and the screaming starts. Seconds earlier, he was live on Facebook, grinning, talking to the camera. No fear, no idea. You think you'd spot the signs, right? The tension, the setup? So did he, until the moment the screen went black. Here on True Crime Case Tapes, we've covered well over 100 homicides. But this one? It doesn't feel like a story. It feels like a dare, like the shooter wanted an audience. And they got one. Because someone hit record before the bullets flew, and what it captured you won't be able to forget. Grainy footage, the glint of metal, a man folding like gravity just doubled. But that step's not even the worst part. He was the kind of dad who didn't care about looking cool, only about seeing his kids smile. In one home video, you can hear him saying, "Let's get baby Nikko laughing again," before tickling his toddler off screen. His daughter, just a few years older, would often climb into his lap while he played old school video games. They called him Daddy Don. That nickname? It came from the streets, but inside the house, it just meant protector. Nikko DeMarcus O'Neill Whitehead had seen his share of Chicago's chaos, but by 2024, his focus had narrowed: survive, stay present, and raise his children right. He grew up in West Side neighborhoods where sidewalks cracked early and trust cracked even earlier. Morton Elementary, Morgan Park High, a straight path, as straight as it could be, where every block came with history. People who knew him back then called him Don Cheeks, a larger-than-life presence with the kind of charisma that made people lean in. He wasn't just loud, he was magnetic. As a teen, Nikko got caught up. He had ties to the Vice Lords, one of the city's most entrenched gangs. That kind of affiliation can brand you for life, even after you've walked away. And in neighborhoods like West Garfield Park, that branding doesn't fade, it festers. Still, by the time he turned 35, Nikko wasn't chasing trouble. He had other outlets. He showed up in a Zach TV Street documentary, later in a gritty YouTube movie alongside a local comedian. These weren't high-budget productions, but they mattered. They were signals that he wanted to be seen, that he was more than just what the streets called him. His wife, Shawn Clay, stood beside him through it all. They weren't flashy, they were real, and that reality meant navigating bills, safety, and school pickups in a part of town where any of those could be disrupted by a single wrong glance. Saturday, June 29th, 2024 didn't start ominous. The weather was hot, the kind of thick heat that settles on your skin and doesn't let go. Nikko had plans. Maybe just to cool off outside, maybe to check in with someone on the block. His family didn't report anything unusual. No angry texts, no phone calls, no warnings. He didn't leave behind a cryptic message or post a song lyric that would get dissected later. He just walked out the door like it was any other night. That's the part that unravels people. There were no signs, no alarms, just the background hum of a summer evening. Music from open windows, neighbors posted on porches, kids still riding bikes even after dark. And Nikko out there among it. But while the surface looked calm, something else was already in motion. That night, more than one person remembered seeing a slow-moving car pass by the 3,300 block of West Franklin Boulevard. It didn't look lost. It looked deliberate. A neighbor later said, it was like someone was searching for something, or someone. Still, nobody called the cops. Why would they? In that part of the city, suspicious isn't unusual. It's just Tuesday. A few hours later, that same car was gone. But Nikko was standing where it had circled earlier. Alone. That steps when time split. And no one realized it yet. There were no arguments. No shouting matches on a corner, no warnings scrawled on Instagram. Just one man walking a familiar block, and someone else preparing to make sure he wouldn't finish it. But before we move forward, pause. Take this moment seriously. Stop for a second. Look around your house, your street, your habits. Now ask yourself, how easy would it be for someone to track you without ever sending a threat? Think you're safe because no one's warned you? Neither did Nikko. Drop a comment below. What would you do differently starting tonight? We returned to West Franklin just before 11:10 p.m. He wasn't set the only one there anymore. And within seconds, that normal night would become a crime scene burned into memory. It was just past 11:10 p.m. The 3,300 block of West Franklin sat mostly still. Porch lights flickered, a few voices echoed from behind a backyard fence. Then, rapid bursts? 6, maybe 7, echoes that made the windows hum. A woman inside a corner apartment ducked instinctively and screamed, "Get down!" before anyone else processed the noise. Another neighbor froze in his living room thinking firecrackers until he saw the muzzle flashes through his blinds. They found him face down on the pavement, not far from the curb. He was bleeding out fast. Chest, abdomen, shoulder. Paramedics said he was still warm when they arrived, but barely responsive. The sirens came quickly. Not quick enough. The first cop on scene radioed in male, multiple GSWs. Not conscious, not breathing. That line went out over dispatch as blue lights washed over the block. But nobody recognized him yet. Not the cops. Not the medics. Not even the neighbor holding their hand over their mouth. Then someone whispered, "Wait, is that Nikko?" And everything slowed. In the seconds after the shots, a dark figure was seen sprinting toward the alley. One witness recalled the person moving with no hesitation like they'd done it before. A hoodie, dark pants, no visible face. By the time anyone got outside, the figure was gone. What was left? One man bleeding, a sidewalk scattered with shell casings, and a bystander yelling into their phone. When first responders loaded him into the ambulance, a phone buzzed inside his pocket. Someone had tagged him. That sips when a new wave of chaos hit. A video clip began circulating that same night. Just 14 seconds long. Grainy. No faces. Just two things. A bright flash from what looked like a firearm and the unmistakable shape of a man collapsing mid-step. It wasn't from security footage. It was vertical, wobbly, cell phone raw. A bystander had caught the moment, then deleted the upload almost as fast, but someone else screen recorded it. Now it was spreading. The comments filled up immediately. "That sips Don Cheeks. No way that sips him. I was just watching his live. Swear he was out there. Nah, that sip's not random. Look how many shots he took." And then the other post surfaced. A screenshot from his earlier Facebook Live showing Nikko talking directly to the camera, maybe 10 minutes before the shooting. Same block, same shirt, same chain. Someone paired both videos and wrote, "From smiling to gone, just like that." Ballistics recovered at the scene confirmed what residents already suspected. This wasn't a wild spray. It was focused. 9 casings, all .40 caliber, grouped tightly, suggesting the shooter had a specific aim and knew how to control recoil. Police noted that the pattern didn't resemble a chaotic drive-by. It was deliberate, efficient, and more telling, there was no sign of return fire. No second shooter, no confusion. Just one assailant, one weapon, one target. That single fact, the precision, told detectives something they didn't say aloud yet. This wasn't heat of the moment. This was premeditated. The medical examiner Seth's report would later reveal 3 of the bullets tore through vital organs. One collapsed a lung. Another clipped his heart. The coroner wrote that the shooter emptied the clip to ensure death. No valuables were taken. His wallet was still on him. Phone too. Even his watch was intact. This was instead about robbery, and it was instead random. By sunrise, CPD's Area 4 homicide unit was already canvassing the block. One officer recognized Nikko's name. Another made the gang connection. Now it got serious. The working theory? Targeted execution? Possibly gang-affiliated, possibly personal. Maybe both. Detectives checked cameras within a 2-block radius. Most homes didn't have working surveillance. but a city traffic camera down the block caught a vehicle idling briefly at 10:54 p.m., a black sedan. The timestamp matched. It didn't say catch a plate, but it was something. That vehicle became CPD SEP's first person of interest. Then came the social media scrape. Nikko's phone was pulled for digital forensics. Messages, recent DMs, call logs. Nothing obvious yet, but they were looking for anything. Warnings, threats, arguments, heat. One name came up more than once in community whispers, a man known locally as Green Eyes. Word was they'd argued days earlier, maybe about money, maybe about turf, or maybe something else entirely. Detectives couldn't confirm it, but the rumor moved fast. So did fear. By day 2, the police knew what they were up against. No one wanted to talk on record. They got vague statements. I heard yelling but didn't see. Someone ran past me, I didn't get a look. I was inside with headphones. But off record, plenty of people knew. They just wouldn't say it to a badge. One officer said, "There steps a whole ecosystem here. You cooperate, you disappear next." Even the person who took the 14-second video ghosted. The clip had gone viral, but the original uploader vanished. Was it fear? Or guilt? Or both? Stroger Hospital. Waiting room. That's when his wife arrived. She had heard rumors online, saw the video, and rushed across town without confirmation. She hoped it was wrong. It wasn't Stet. When they told her, she collapsed. A family member punched a wall and shattered their hand. Another screamed into their hoodie and didn't stop for several minutes. This wasn't a moment. It was a detonation. They sat there for hours saying nothing, just staring at the floor, until a nurse quietly brought over Nikko's belongings. A phone, a keychain, a hat his daughter had given him for Father's Day. He had worn it that night. By the morning of June 30th, his name was everywhere. Memorial posts, hashtags, fan tributes from people who followed his YouTube videos. But also, comments. The kind that flood tragedies like this. That sets what gang life gets you. He shouldn't have been out there. He knew what he signed up for. And then, he was a father, a husband. Shut your mouth unless you knew him. The divide was immediate. So was the pain. His daughter asked if he was coming home. Nobody had the words. The more they looked, the clearer the pattern became. The shooter had planned it. They scouted the block hours earlier, confirmed by 2 independent witnesses. They waited until Nikko was alone. They got close. They fired until there was no pulse. They disappeared. This was surgical. And that meant they had motive. Whether it was revenge, rivalry, or reputation, it was personal. Police didn't say it officially, but internally, they were calling it what it looked like. A hit. If you've made it this far good, you should be unsettled. Because whoever did this, they are still out there. Hit like, share this story. Someone out there saw the same pattern. And if they don't, speak up. Another father might not make it home tonight. Within the first 48 hours, 14-second clip spreads across Instagram, Reddit, and Facebook. Community tips mention Green Eyes, but no solid leads. Ballistic report confirms same caliber used in another unsolved shooting, but no match. Rumored surveillance still being analyzed. No arrest, no named suspect. CPD set up a public tip hotline. Posters went up on the block, but behind closed doors, detectives knew unless someone cracked or the shooter slipped, they were stuck. One said quietly, "We know who knows. We just don't know who'll break first." And here sits where it turns inward. Because if the physical evidence hit a wall, then the only way forward was to ask, what kind of person kills like this in front of an audience and walks away like nothing happened? There's a specific kind of person who can walk up to another human being, shoot them at close range, and leave their body twitching on the pavement. And it's not someone who lost control. It's someone who never needed it in the first place. This wasn't rage. It wasn't a fight that boiled over. What happened to Nikko was methodical, like following a recipe. Locate, approach, eliminate, vanish. So the question becomes, what does it take to be that cold? Let's break it down. Psychologists who've studied targeted killings in urban environments describe a specific profile, particularly in cases where the victim had some notoriety and the crime happened publicly. As that's not about impulse. It's about execution, literally and psychologically. According to Dr. Carlton Mays, a clinical forensic expert at John Jay College, these shooters often feel they're delivering a message, not just to the victim, but to the entire community. Control is the drug. Every step is power. Approaching in the dark? That sips dominance. Firing repeatedly while others are nearby? That's arrogance. Disappearing without panic? That sips practice. And if the shooter knew Nikko personally, which is likely, the act carries an added layer of emotional detachment, a conscious override of empathy. People like this aren't exploding, they're performing. There sits one more psychological twist to consider. He was live streaming before he died. Did the killer know that? If so, this wasn't set just murder, it was theater. And if they didn't, that's somehow worse. Because in their world, cameras aren't deterrents, they're decorations. Killing someone with an audience no longer registers as high risk, it registers as status. That's the level of normalization we're dealing with. One click and you're viral. One pull of the trigger and you're a legend. It's a frightening shift. Violence has become performance art. Now zoom out. How does someone with that mindset get so far? In cities like Chicago, the answer isn't a single broken system, it's a web of them. Nikko Set's case reveals the weak spots. Street-level trauma. Boys growing up amid normalized death often struggle to see life as permanent. Grief becomes wallpaper. Boundaries blur. Gang loyalty versus survival. For many, gang ties are less about crime and more about protection, but walking away, if that's even an option, can come with fatal consequences. Fear of retaliation. Witnesses saw something. They always do. But they've also seen what happens when people talk. And in neighborhoods where trust in police is razor thin, silence becomes a survival instinct. Case overload. That same weekend, 27 people were shot. Detectives aren't superheroes, they're human. Resources thin, leads stack up, pressure builds, cases stall. So when you ask, why wasn't the killer caught? Understand the answer is layers deep. And in those layers, a killer like this can hide for years. You might be thinking, this is distant. That this is about other people in other places with other problems. But pause. Really pause. Ask yourself, have you ever walked past someone on the street and not looked up? Have you ever watched a video of violence and just kept scrolling? That numbness. That sips how this spreads. Because killers don't just need guns, they need observers who do nothing. They need communities too scared to speak. They need silence, and silence is contagious. You don't have to be holding the weapon to be part of the equation. All you have to do is believe it's not your problem. This murder wasn't set as spur-of-the-moment crime. It was cost-benefit analysis in a city where killers calculate the odds of being caught and often come up winning. Think about it. Shoot someone in a crowd, people one sit talk. Use a common gun, ballistics one set trace it. Wear a mask or hood, video one sit help. Kill someone with gang ties, sympathy will be divided, so the killer runs the math, and they pull the trigger. Because in their world, justice isn't real unless it's personal. And law enforcement, it sits background noise. There sets one more thing. Police have never released the full video. Why? Sources say it may show something unexpected. A detail on the shooter Sepp's clothing, a second shadow, a hand gesture that signals gang affiliation, or maybe it shows nothing. And that sets the real fear. That someone could murder a man on camera in front of an entire digital world and leave no trace. That SIP's not just a failure of policing. That SIP's a failure of attention. Here sits what you look for. Sudden silence in familiar people. Someone who's suddenly low profile after a public crime may be hiding guilt or fear. Boasting masked as jokes. If someone's laughing about a crazy event but was nearby, pay attention. Conflicting accounts. Watch who changes their story, even slightly. Truth rarely needs editing. Digital trails, cryptic captions, deleted posts, new burner accounts. These are modern breadcrumbs. You're sure not powerless. You are not too far removed. And you fare not immune to proximity. This didn't just happen to Nikko. It happened in front of all of us. There's something CPD hasn't said. Not publicly, but some in the neighborhood believe the shooter wasn't a stranger. They say Nikko recognized the face in the seconds before the shots rang out. And that's why he didn't run. By early July, flyers started appearing on utility poles across West Garfield Park. A black and white photo of Nikko. The words, "Do you know who did this?" printed in bold. Below it, a tip line and a quiet plea. Your silence helps the killer. No one had been arrested. In fact, no suspect had even been named. It wasn't from lack of trying. CPD's Area 4 homicide unit had processed every casing, interviewed every neighbor, chased every whisper about green eyes, but the leads dried up faster than they formed. A community tip linked the name Green to an unrelated case. That lead collapsed within days. For Nikko's family, that moment felt like the system pulled the rug and then set fire to the floor underneath it. The case entered what police refer to as pre-charge limbo, the purgatory between investigation and prosecution where no formal accusations exist, and yet everyone involved feels the pressure. Behind closed doors, prosecutors had been briefed. The Cook County State's Attorney's Office was on standby. If a suspect emerged, they were prepared to charge first-degree murder without hesitation. Multiple shots. No robbery. Precise intent. It fit the profile. Illinois doesn't have the death penalty, but with a gun enhancement, the sentence could stretch from 45 years to natural life. Still, that only mattered if a name could be matched to the bullet casings, and to date it hasn't. Each week, without progress, tightened the knot. The family stopped checking for updates from detectives, not because they stopped caring, but because they couldn't handle hearing, "We're still working on it, one more time." The grief didn't freeze in place. It metastasized. At every birthday party, Nikko's absence sat at the table. During school pickups, his kids scanned the crowd out of habit. The reality hadn't sunk in yet. Not completely. Maybe it never would. His mother started attending city council meetings. She held up her son's photo like a banner. Sometimes she spoke. Other times she just stood there. Silent. Present. Unignorable. What does justice look like when no one's been held accountable? It looks like insistence, like refusing to let the story fade, like showing up until someone finally breaks their silence. While his case didn't spark national headlines, it became symbolic in West Garfield Park. Block clubs began organizing evening patrols. A local church launched a Lights On for Nikko campaign, asking residents to leave porch lights burning after dark in his memory. One muralist painted his face on a brick wall just blocks from the shooting with a halo overhead, and his nickname Dawn in graffiti script. Even strangers took notice. An Instagram post showing his daughter placing a crown in her father's casket was reshared thousands of times. It wasn't just about Nikko anymore. It was about every family who had lost someone and never saw justice walk through the door. If this case shook you, don't subscribe, because next week's story makes this one look tame. Someone else's life is hanging by a thread right now, and the moment they lose grip will be right here. Like, comment, share, and hit subscribe, because silence protects killers. Exposure stops them. That's full. It's been over a year since Nikko was shot. And while the block has changed, one thing hasn't. No one has said his killer Sip's name out loud. But someone knows it. And that Sip's the part that keeps his family awake. The sound never really fades. Not when it happens on your own block. Not when the flash of a gun lives forever in pixels. Not when silence follows so loudly it rings in your ears for days. That corner on West Franklin still feels colder, even in July. There's no memorial tape left, no sirens, just memory. You walk past the spot and your breath shortens, not because of what you see, because of what you can't forget. A figure folding mid-step, a weapon lighting up the dark, a face you never see. And maybe you're wondering how close this has ever come to you. A friend who's been too quiet, a neighbor who seemed too calm the morning after, a stranger watching your feet a little too closely. We tell ourselves we'd know when something's wrong, but so did he. And someone watched him take his last breath and still hasn't said a word. So, the question is, if it happened again tonight, would anyone speak? Would you? Because the scariest part about this story isn't who pulled the trigger. It's Eds who still has the dope in their mouth. Sweet dreams.